Okay, folks, we're going to get started. Welcome to tonight's webinar, Ducks Unlimited Waterfowl Hunting 101. This is a pilot. This is a first ever waterfowl hunting webinar. I think you're going to enjoy it. And obviously you can see all the topics up there: biology, identification, hunting methods, decoys and calling, firearms, ammunition, and specialty clothing. Now, from what I understand, although these slides move fast in front of me, there may be a delay. So when I flip it over, I'm probably just going to pause a second or two, because that's probably what it's going to take till you see it. Okay, folks, so you know tonight's panelists. Obviously, I'm here as your host, the Hunter Engagement Coordinator. Doug Howell, our WRC Migratory Bird Coordinator. He was not able to make it tonight, but he provided a presentation and he did a very good job. And it will be my goal as a biologist, but not a waterfowl hunter, to do it at least some justice. We are very pleased to have Terry Smith here tonight, Ducks Unlimited Youth Engagement Coordinator in Region 7, definitely a waterfowl hunter, and also a waterfowl hunter and someone that helps me with these webinars many, many times, and good friend in the mountains, Nathan Cox, who's our Master WRC Enforcement Officer, Master Officer Cox. And I'm glad to have all of them here tonight. So obviously you guys know the drill already. This webinar length is 1 hour. It is recorded. And as I always say, it will be distributed in less than 2 weeks or up to 2 weeks. It needs to be processed, i.e. pulled from the cloud and then made into a YouTube and added to our WRC other YouTube videos. There is a 30-minute Q&A, and we ask that the topics are in writing. The questions need to be in writing, topic specific, and they will be addressed during the Q&A session, but not during the webinar. So please, in writing only, and we will address them later, and I will narrate. Chat hand raising may be monitored, but our focus, we want on the content and not folks writing. Obviously, if there's something urgent, but please allow us to cover the material before writing questions. A lot of times we'll see questions at the end on things we already covered. So give us a chance to cover the information. Again, I think you'll enjoy it tonight, and that'll help us out, and you too. So again, thanks for joining us tonight. Obviously, there is a reason for what we do as a state agency that is tasked with science-based principles, whether that be wildlife science relative to wildlife species, or even in our social services like that we're involved in now, where we're communicating with constituents. We have to do some evaluation and try to understand why we're doing it. There has to be a reason. This is a survey that some of you have probably heard about quite some time ago. It's every 5 years by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's a bit behind the 21, which is now going to be the 2022 5-year survey from 2016, a little over 5 years, is expected summer of 23. But the reality of this whole slide is hunter numbers have been on a precipitous decline. We reached a high point between 1975 and 1980, 17.1 million strong, 8 to 10% of the population, and that is 17.1 million age 16 and older, because we weren't surveying youth then, down to a point of 2016, 11.5, and about 4 or 5% of the population. And this is a national survey. So looking a little bit closer at home, one of the things that we know is license holders far exceed active participating licensed hunters. And as an example, you can see here for the 2021 year, we're up to about 700,000 license holders, but only about 300,000 participating. And many of you may know about the lifetime licenses here. Sometimes they're bought for infants, may never even be used by a hunter. So it is a one-time contribution to conservation, whereas the participating hunter not only contributes a lot more to conservation, obviously, but also to maintain hunting. If we're not participating, we're not hunting anymore. And so it's kind of an important thing. So now thinking in terms of a big cohort of hunters, the generation of which I'm part of, and actually turning a crispy 63 years this month, that is the I like to call the greatest number of modern day North American hunters of all time, and we are fastly aging out. It is a huge cohort of hunters that is slipping right off the grid. And one of the things I'm very excited about is that there is a new niche market of folks that are coming in that didn't grow up in hunting families. They'll never replace the boomer generation, but hopefully they'll keep hunting as a viable pastime for others. And as you can see, roughly around that 63, 64 years of age, folks start dropping out. So looking at it differently, in a little bit different way, that top line is the North Carolina estimated population that, as many of you know, continues to grow. And now you look at those hunter license sales, it is far lower number, and the participating hunters also far lower. And about the only thing good about that line for the participating hunters, obviously license holders good too, but the participation part, again, that's important, that makes hunting what it is today, that we do it and that it seems relevant, is relatively stable in North Carolina. And we're happy about that. But again, the concern is we're representing a smaller and smaller population overall. And you heard me say 8-10% 75, 4 to 5% between 1975 and 80, 4 to 5% in 2016. And now if you look at the numbers, 2021, 300,000 hunters, 10.6 million population in the state. We are less than 3% of the population overall. And the reality is there, again, will hunting remain relevant? You know, if nobody's doing it, if very few people are doing it, is it really important? And that's one of the things we hope to not let fall behind. So obviously I'm involved in two types of programming: hunting webinars that are open for both novice and experienced, and the Getting Started Outdoors, which will be in the future called Learn to Hunt. That is the name used by other states, so you'd be using the same thing, but we initially called it Getting Started Outdoors. The Getting Started Outdoors is in person, whereas the webinar is online, and it has very basic things in it that most hunters already know, like how to shoot firearms, how to scout for game, how to climb a tree stand, how to recover game. But there are many folks that need that extra training. And that is what the GSO is about. And it is for that particular audience. These are really experiments to offset participation decline. Do we know if they're going to work? Well, we like to think they will, but only time will tell. In order to build the programming, and I'm continually expanding, we need volunteer support, volunteer instructors, volunteer logistics folks. That's folks that will just help at a workshop, for example. And some of these pictures are from the workshop, and also landowners that are willing to host. We currently only have one landowner that we actually have featured in this month's magazine, Wildlife Magazine, and it is someone in Gastonia. So places that we can host GSO workshops would be great throughout the state. Then we can reach far more people. So we're hoping that some of that outreach helps. And if you're a landowner and interested or thinking about it, please email me at that gso@ncwildlife.org. That is my alias. And or if you're interested in volunteering, we could use you. All you need to know is in that Regulations Digest. And I like to say it's kind of like the Bible of hunting. Make sure you have one. Of course, you can look at everything online. But as I often will say too, you've got to go to the restroom, so take it there with you. Leave it sit there and you get a chance to read it. There's a lot more intricacies in migratory bird hunting. And as you can see there, Regs Digest page 71 through 77. Let your fingers do the walking first before you go hunting. Familiarize yourself with that stuff first. And obviously there is a link to that migratory common mammal and bird species, what to hunt. And you can see there, migratory bird and waterfowl information, including regulations. You're going to learn a bunch of stuff tonight, but you're going to need more online. So make sure you look at that. So obviously this is a biology, as I call it, the prerequisite to hunting. As legendary turkey hunter from, God, now I'm forgetting the state, from, anyway, legendary turkey hunting Ray Eye once said about turkeys, he said, the turkeys will teach you how to hunt them. And it's from Missouri. Wow, I had a senior moment there. Missouri. And so will the waterfowl teach you how to hunt them. So observing animals in the wild are really going to teach you and gaining a better understanding of how they live their lives. So again, this was brought to us by Doug Howell. He wasn't able to make it here tonight, but he did provide this for us to overview. Hopefully I'll do it justice. So obviously waterfowl in NC includes geese, as we already know if we live in urban areas, swans, ducks, mergansers, and coots. And you'll be hearing about more of that via Terry when he gives his presentation on hunting. There's the dabblers, obviously do what the one's doing in the picture. They're primarily vegetarian, roots, tubers, and fruits. They either feed along that surface or they tip up. That's why you see their rear going up in the air. And that includes those species: mallards, black ducks, teal, widgeon, gadwall, shovelers, pintails, and wood ducks. And remember too, you will have the recording of this. So even if we move relatively quick through it, you'll be able to go back to it. So those are dabblers. Then we have the species of divers, not so much near the surface, far deeper, and also includes invertebrates and small crustaceans. So they're more of the meat eaters. They dive under the surface up to 6 to 10 feet, so quite a ways to go down. And that includes species like ringnecks, canvasbacks, redhead, scaup, and the merganser species. So they're the divers. Then we have these sea ducks, saltwater types that feed on small and large crustaceans like clams and mollusks, found almost exclusively in the open water, the salt water, and the sounds, and include scooters, eiders, if I said that correctly, and long-tailed ducks. So there's your three main types. So obviously you can see here, all that blue is the resident Canada geese when we're talking about migrant goose populations. They don't migrate. They usually have enough to eat. They're everywhere, often, sadly, end up being nuisances in some cases. So they're definitely more liberal seasons and bag limits. Then we have that northeast zone that protects the flyway population geese migrating from northern Quebec, and obviously more restrictive seasons and bag limits. And you can see the insert there that is in the regulations. It gives the areas, and you'll be able to read this later, but like where that resident zones are, and obviously the northeast zone there too. And those are things you will want, again, to familiarize yourself before you go out hunting. The most waterfowl migrating NNC breed in that Atlantic flyway in eastern Canada. And the species there, as you can see, wood ducks, green-winged teal, ringneck ducks, mallards, black ducks, pintails. And then the Arctic nesting species are the greater snow geese, Atlantic Canada geese, Atlantic brant, and tundra swan. So you can see all the way from the upper reaches of Canada, all the way along that, and referring to the Atlantic flyway. Pretty interesting stuff, especially for a non-waterfowl hunter like me. So some obviously coming here breed in that Great Plains in the prairie pothole region. I've heard of that. I've heard people talk about it, the puddles out there in the prairie. And you can see all the species from between the Atlantic flyway, Mississippi Central, and all those lines that again run from Canada through the US. So it's definitely international travel for these species, with them being canvasback, redhead, scaup, gadwalls, and shovelers. Very, very interesting. So how do they know? Well, for me as a turkey and a deer hunter, it has to do with similar things that bring on the breeding season in those species. The changes in day length triggers those hormonal responses in the brains and lets them know what time it is to migrate. So you can see there on the left, you can see that as the daylight decreases, that's the onset of the fall migration. And then in contrast, after January, when it's starting to go back up and the days are lengthening, the onset of spring migration. So interesting stuff. Many of our waterfowl, though, particularly ducks, arrive in NC prior to Thanksgiving, and they're referred to as calendar ducks. So there's an expectation for them to come. Then there are some that basically travel down here that are booted out when things start to freeze up, because they may not reach North Carolina until snow and ice farther north forces them out. And I've often heard hunters talk about that if it's a warm winter, they might not get some of those ducks. If they can stay up there and get open water, they're good to stay. So more interesting things. So obviously you can see comparing two zones here, the inland and the coastal, very similar in that I see the coastal early season is 2 days short, pretty much the same for the mid period, that November 4 to November 25th, and just 1 day longer in the coastal zone, amounting to 60 days for both. October, season time for the harvest of local woodies and other migrating like green-winged teal. November for those calendar ducks. And then many continue farther south during early to mid-December. Whereas the other ones that we mentioned, including calendar ducks and duck force south, are part of late season as well. So in eastern North Carolina, or rather western North Carolina, you can see these hunters rely heavily on the wood ducks and Canada geese. Obviously, they don't have that open water. Lots of streams, maybe pond, the agricultural fields. And yeah, you can see that's all included, including pastures. In central North Carolina, I'm assuming here, since there's no text, that it's more or less similar areas that are ponds, some streams, and things like that that are hunted rather than the open water. So probably similar to the west with maybe larger lakes, perhaps in some cases. And of course, Terry may speak on that later on. And obviously in the more open water also has the greater diversity of species, habitats, and opportunity, and obviously greater winds and some probably really cold, wet days out in a boat or a blind. But you can see opportunities abound in our state for different opportunities depending on where we are. So obviously, got through that, my first waterfowl biology presentation. Hopefully I did Doug justice, and we appreciate for that. So now it is time for Terry to take over. I'm going to move the slide and he's going to take the screen. Terry, take it away.
All right, so thank you, Dee. I'm really glad to be here to talk ducks and duck hunting with you folks. Obviously, quick background bio on myself. My name's Terry Smith. I'm the Youth Engagement Coordinator for Ducks Unlimited in Region 7. Region 7 is Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. I live here in North Carolina in Bladen County. Prior to working for DU, I was a high school teacher and football coach at East Bladen for 18 and a half years. I killed my first duck when I was about 10 years old with my father. I turned 51 this year, so I've been waterfowl hunting here in North Carolina for 40 years. I hope you can all gain a little bit of knowledge from this webinar, and I'm going to try to give you kind of a soup to nuts rundown of what you need and what tactics you can use in the field. I've got a lot of pictures of a lot of equipment and that's used duck hunting, but I don't want anybody to think that you have to spend a whole lot of money or have to have the latest fads or gadgets in order to go hunting. The last thing I want is for someone to leave tonight thinking that you can't go hunting because you don't have all the latest gadgets. I just want you to have a little bit of knowledge. And if you see something in the field or see something on the internet, then you'll at least know how or why it might be used. All right, so a little bit of quick kind of, I'm not in enforcement, but there's a couple of rules you kind of need to know about when you're waterfowl hunting. Waterfowl, like Deke said, is migratory, so they're federally regulated. The bag limits are set by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Every year, your seasons, the bag limits are dictated by the flyway. So we're in the Atlantic Flyway. And one thing you have to have is a federal duck stamp, along with all the state license that you have to have. You also have to have a federal duck stamp, and you must use non-toxic shot. So the most expensive version of that would be steel, but you can go up to tungsten and spend all kind of money on things like that. So a quick introduction to Ducks Unlimited, world's leader in wetlands and waterfowl conservation. Ducks Unlimited conserves, restores, and manages wetlands and associated habitats for North America's waterfowl. These habitats benefit not only the wildlife, but also, for the people. Something crazy for me. All right, this slide is not moving on me, Deep.
All
There we
right,
go.
if you want, I can click for you if you're running into problems.
Yep, I think I'm good right here. So just on the slide right here, DU conserved more than 16 million acres since 1937. And just my role with Ducks Unlimited as Youth Engagement Coordinator, youth, our Green Wing memberships, which are 12 and under. Also do Ducks Unlimited University, which is our college chapters, DU Varsity, which is high school chapters. And I give a scholarship every year. We do one $10,000, 10 $1,000, and $5,500 scholarships every year. So these are a couple of pretty good websites: ducks.org, North Carolina Wildlife, and then that's the federal website. I'm not sure what the FWS stands for, but you can use those, check on those when the presentation comes back out, or take a picture of it if you want to right quick. And then some hunting ethics. So when we talk about no sky busting, sky busting is when you shoot at birds that are out of your range. Circling you, they're too high. Obviously, you don't want to wound an animal or something like that, but you can also mess up other hunters when you're hunting in public land, and they're a couple hundred yards away from you. Ducks may be flying around, going to them. You kind of go by you high and you shoot. So just code of ethics for waterfowl hunting would be not sky busting. In the same line, you don't want to set up too close to folks in public land. Just like in any other situation, if somebody gets that spot, I always try to have A, B, and C plan. If I get there and somebody's in the spot I wanted to hunt, I've got an alternative to go somewhere else. Just want to give everybody room and enough room for everybody to hunt out there. And then, of course, make every effort to recover. So if you shoot a bird, ducking it's down, you want to make every effort. Dogs work good for that. Obviously, sometimes animals get away, but just as an ethical hunter, you want to make every effort to try and recover that. Then a couple little safety notes here. When you're in a blind hunting, you kind of never want to take your gun off a safe until you have it shouldered, ready to shoot. I've been in blinds with folks before where they kind of pop the safety a little bit early and then set the gun back down, not thinking about it. Guns can fall. You're in the woods bumping. Just be safe like that. Also have a rule that I keep guns pointed to the sky when there's somebody out front picking up other ducks. So make sure everybody's kind of mounted where your barrels are. That's just basic hunter safety. And then obviously PFDs, personal flotation devices, if you're in boats. Oh, there we go. So there's a lag for me. I'm not sure if there's a lag for you guys, but there's a lag when I click on it. So as we talk about duck hunting and tactics, there are really only a couple of environments that are conducive for waterfowl hunting. You have your swampy, flooded rivers, beaver ponds, or flooded ag fields, open water, big lakes, coastal marshes, and then dry field hunting for feeding migratory birds. Now I'm going to talk mostly about North Carolina, the types of ducks and the duck hunting that we have available here in our home state. Luckily, here in North Carolina, we have most all of this is available. The dry field hunting is usually just for geese. We don't get much ducks in dry field around here. But all the rest of the types and locations are pretty much available here. We're lucky we have a lot of public access in North Carolina. One of the reasons that Deke and I want to do this tonight is because October 1st is a deadline for registering for North Carolina wildlife draw hunts. So if you're interested in doing that, you can go on the website and register by October for all the draw hunts, but there are plenty of just kind of walk-in areas, and each county is a little different about how the riverways work, but you can hunt in rivers and streams, of course, beaver ponds all around. And then we'll talk about types of ducks here. My slide will click on. So as we talked about puddle ducks earlier, we'll spend a little bit more on. So top left is a mallard. Mallard is the most prevalent duck in North America. We don't necessarily have, there's probably not the most prevalent duck in North Carolina. but definitely in the United States. So you have mallard drake, top left-hand corner. There's one flying. Then a wood duck drake, the top right-hand corner. Below that's a wood duck drake and a hen. So, and if you didn't know, the drake is the male term for a duck. The next duck is a widgeon, American widgeon. And then you have blue-winged teal. And then the green-winged teal. I don't know if you can see my cursor pointing at them, but I'll do that. Then below that, bottom left is a pintail. You have pintail drake and a pintail hen. And the bottom right's a gadwall. So, and then if you see that gadwall tipped up, these are puddle ducks or dabbling ducks, like we talked about earlier in the biology part. You see this duck's butt tipped up in the air, so he can feed just kind of on the surface, usually feeding about 18 to 0 inches of water. And then we have the diver ducks. So top left-hand corner is a scaup, a bluebill. Duck in the middle is a redhead. Top right-hand corner is a bufflehead. The bottom left-hand corner is a ringneck. A lot of people get the ringnecks and the bluebills confused. They look real similar, but the ringneck actually has a ring around its neck. It's got a burgundy colored ring around its neck. The ringneck also has a ring around its bill that bluebills don't have. So that's an easy way to tell when they're on the water, when they're down, you're picking them up. And you have a canvasback. Canvasback is a big duck. And then the mergansers. The mergansers actually aren't a duck. They're a species in itself, but you have a separate limit for mergansers, but you know, you'll have a good idea of what these divers are. And these diving ducks dive down to 10 foot to feed, usually found in deeper water. Then the geese for around North Carolina. So you have a Canada goose in the top left-hand corner, and then snow geese. And then bottom left is a tundra swan. There's a lot of snow geese, a lot of tundra swan around Hyde County. I think something like 95% of all the tundra swan in the world migrate there to Hyde County. There are different kind of species as well. So tundra swan is a permit hunt only. So you apply for a permit and you get one tag and you can kill one tundra swan a year. And then the bottom right is a brant. So the brant look real similar to a goose, but this is more of a sound bird found around the same kind of places as the sea ducks are. All right, so we got equipment and clothing. Mainly waterproof and water resistant. You know, obviously the name waterfowl hunting, you're going to be around water most of the time when you're hunting, even in dry fields, it's muddy and messy, and you want waterproof clothes, water resistant clothes. Pictures right here. So I've got there's a coat on the left, obviously raincoat, a little bit of insulation, and then bibs. I wear bibs a lot because that way you don't have to worry about your pants being waterproof. If I'm not wearing waders, I'm always wearing bibs. And then kind of the main is base layers. So a lot of layering in waterfowl. You do a lot of walking around, a lot of traveling in knee-deep water, get sweaty. Merino wool works good as a base layer. Anything that's kind of moisture wicking, because you're going to build up a sweat and you want to be able to let that kind of air out and don't want to get too overworked and then get cold. If you got a lot of cotton on, it gets sweaty and wet. And then as the day moves on, it gets colder and you get a little bit colder, uncomfortable. So again, like a lot of layering. I use a vest a lot for layering. Then you have just a 3/4 zip pullover. I'm a big fan of like a pullover hoodie type stuff. You can slip those on and slip them off. I don't know if I'm getting a little bit more slide. There we go. All right. So, and then while we're on clothes here, just talk a little bit about camouflage. Probably the least important part about duck hunting. You definitely need to hide and be still, but most of the time when you're duck hunting, you're usually hiding behind something inside some sort of blind in a boat. You know, occasionally you're standing up next to a tree, but you know, obviously they sell camouflages. there's basically two different versions of camouflage. There's a light yellow color for marsh, stubble field, cornfield type hunting. And then there's a darker color more for in the swamps, hunting in timber and that kind of stuff. So every camouflage brand has their own version of it. This is kind of Sitka's version of their waterfowl light yellow color. The one beside that's a hoodie that's a mossy oak shadow grass brand. Everybody has their own kind of version of it. The darker colors, I'm kind of favorable to the mossy oak bottomland. And then this is Sitka's darker color right here. So again, everybody's got their own version. If you're going out and you're having to buy a new set of camouflage, you want to go hunting, I would recommend, unless you know you're always going to be hunting in the marsh, to go darker. It's a little bit easier to hide the darker in some reeds or in some corn stubble than it is to stand out with the yellow. Sometimes the yellow down in, if you're going to be in the woods hunting wood ducks and hunting in a beaver pond and swamps, that yellow sometimes stands out up against a tree. So if you're out looking for a brand or something to get, I recommend you get a darker color to begin with if you have to go buy something. If not, you hunt with what you got. And same thing, we're talking about boots. So again, boots is going to be wet. Most of the time you're in brown water. Even if you're hunting in a field, then you're going to be hunting in mud, muck. Usually if it's dry and dusty, that's probably not too conducive for waterfowl hunting. So everything you're going to be around is going to be kind of messy and muddy. And so it should be on knee boots right now. Obviously just a regular pair of knee boots. You can get them insulated, uninsulated, just something to keep the mud and dirt off of you. Hip boots, if you're not familiar with hip boots, it's just an extended version of a knee boot, just comes up to your hip. I hunt with hip boots a lot, wearing hip boots with those bibs I showed you before. And then of course, chest waders. Probably the easiest thing to do. 90% of the time I'm hunting in chest waders. The waders are just simple. You can cover everything with them. You've already got your waterproof all the way up to your chest. So makes it easy just to slide on. You can go just as expensive as you want to with chest waders. There are companies out there now selling chest waders for $1,000. But that's not necessary to do that. You can find very reasonable prices for chest waders. These are actually insulated, so if it's cold, again, the bottom half of your body is kind of covered. I really like waders. I'll wear them about, just like I said, but close to 90% of the time when I'm hunting, I'm wearing waders. And you can wear anything you want to under it. So then you're going to want to have probably something to help carry things around. There's tons of different kind of bags and stuff out there. Your basic, what you call a blind bag, the first bag on the left, usually a square bottom bag, waterproof. It holds a couple of boxes of shells and all the kind of stuff you want to take with you, your calls and extra toboggan, gloves, all that kind of stuff. Then the backpack. So the backpack is super easy. Easy, convenient when you have to walk a long distance. I've used a backpack for a long time. I prefer the backpack. You can get in, you can kind of hang it on a tree if you're in the swamp somewhere. It just depends on how much stuff that you want to carry with you. The more room you have, kind of the more stuff you take with you. So a lot of times it may not be worth that. I've last couple of years kind of migrated to a little bit smaller pack. I'm hunting close to home now. Just about 30 minutes from the house, about a 5-minute walk in. So I use a really small pack. This is my actual little pack that I'm using right now. I just dumped everything out kind of on the ground so you can see kind of a EDC, everyday carry of what I take in the woods, give you an idea of some of the things that you could use or need to. Little multiplier. This is an old Gerber original style. Comes in real handy. You're always messing with decoys, playing with something, crimping something back together. Got a little knife blade on there, a little saw blade on there. Everything a multi-tool is good for. I love a multi-tool. I carry one on my hip every day. So I keep one of those in my bag. Then kind of a knife to clean your birds with. I'm real partial to this knife now with the trade-in blades. It stays razor sharp all the time. It's got some texture to the edge of it. So you're messing around bloody animals and knife doesn't slip so much. And this is a cheap pair of kind of pruning shears there. They're ratcheted. You always need to cut some more camouflage to put around you or cut you a shooting hole out of the middle of something. Then obviously a headlamp. Headlamp's a good thing to have when you're waterfowl hunting. A lot of times you need both hands. Your hands are full carrying stuff in, or you're messing with decoys. So I like a good headlamp. This one has some green and red light to not disturb game. I use for turkey and deer hunting, but when I'm duck hunting, I kind of use it on the full beam, bright white light, so I can see out across the water what I'm looking for, where I'm going. And then a couple of pair of gloves I keep in my bag. Waterproof, kind of windproof pair of gloves, and then a really thin pair. I can combine them together if I need to, but use one as a glove liner if you need to, or if it's warm like it is in North Carolina a lot of times. But in camouflage wise, you need to cover your face and cover your hands a lot. All right, and then there's a duck tote. When you have a successful hunt, you got to take the ducks out, take the birds out with you. It's really convenient to have something to strap them onto and kind of throw them over your shoulder rather than have to have 4 or 5 if you kill a limit of 6 and have a way to move them. So I keep a duck tote in there too. And then obviously there are a little Ziploc bag in the corner there that with toilet paper, some matches. This kind of stuff just goes into all my bags. When I get through duck season, I'll put it into my vest for deer hunting or turkey hunting. And then we come to guns and equipment. So obviously you're going to need a shotgun. You may already have some sort of shotgun, probably work great. Usually 12 gauge, 20 gauge is what would be preferred. Any version, automatic, pump. So this is a 12 gauge auto. This is a Browning Maxus 2. Every manufacturer now makes something like this for waterfowl. Doesn't matter, Winchester, Browning, Beretta, Benelli, Mossberg, they all got a kind of higher end waterfowl gun that's got some sort of coating on it to keep it from getting rusty. Usually going to have synthetic stocks and all. This is an automatic. This is a gun I've been using the last few years now. So if we can flip. And then, so 12 gauge pump. This is a Browning pump shotgun BPS. When I was younger, that's waterfowl hunters used pumps and over and under double barrel shotguns because automatic shotguns just were not reliable enough 20 years ago. Now they definitely are made a lot better, but mud and stuff, they wouldn't cycle very well a long time ago, years ago. Now they're perfectly fine. But this is a pump. This is my earlier shotgun, and then I got a 20 gauge. All right, so this is a 20 gauge auto. Rete Massimara, I probably butchered that name, but again, just any kind of shotgun you can come up with. There's been a push kind of in the last couple of years, sub gauge guns. So obviously 16 gauge, 28 gauge. If you can find the shells and all, it's fine. If you've got one, you can obviously use it. But if you need a shotgun, a 12 gauge to 20 gauge is usually preferred for waterfowl hunting. And then we got some shells, talking about the types of shells. So these are 12 gauge, 3.5 inch number 3s. And this is heavy metal. So it's a Heavy Shot brand. This is a brand, I've been shooting these shells for a little while now. This is a mixture of steel and their version of some bismuth. So, and this obviously, again, it's 3.5 inch. And then we should have 12 gauge 3.5 BBs. So if I'm shooting just geese, I definitely want to use something a little bigger if I'm actually out targeting geese. So the BBs work pretty good for geese. Also, I'll shoot these BBs a little bit on the coast too. On the coast, a lot of times, if you're out on the sound, you don't want to have to chase a duck. You definitely want to kill it instantly, knock it down, put some of this in it, and so you don't have to go chasing a cripple way across the sound somewhere. So, but the BB is a little bigger shot for geese. And those are, those were both 3.5 inch. So these are 12 gauge. These are 3-inch shells. These are kind of new to the market the last couple of years, maybe 2-3 years. But this company has a 2-4 stack. So they've actually got 2s and 4s stacked in there. Kind of interesting. I've shot these the last 2 years a little bit, I think. So, 3-inch, I've gone down a little bit on 3-inch to save a little bit of the beating. I shot 3.5-inch shells all the time for a long time. My thought process was that if they made a 3.5-inch, I'd shoot that. If they made a 4-inch, I would shoot that. But the older I get, the little more pounding it put on me. So I've eased up a little bit on that. Shoot some 3-inch now. And then I got these 20 gauge. So these are 20 gauge number 2s. And then a comparison of kind of what the side, they all look like the side by side. So you got obviously a 12 gauge 3.5-inch, 12 gauge 3-inch, and then the 20 gauge 3-inch. So there's a pretty big difference between the 12 gauge 3.5-inch and the 23-inch. Put a lot more pellets down range. And then from shotguns, you kind of go to chokes. Most modern shotguns now come with interchangeable chokes, removable chokes. Best practice probably if you're using one of those is to use a modified. If you look at this, you should be able to kind of blurry, but this lead full and then lead modified. So you want to, usually when it's a lead modified, then it's going to be a steel full. So kind of back down on some of those. Most of them should tell you on that. The lead full, you probably are not supposed to shoot steel through that. Steel shot does not compress like lead does and can kind of get in there and beat around a little bit. But again, the recommendation, most modern shotguns will have interchangeable chokes. So if you can just stick to the modified for steel, you'll be in pretty good shape. And with that, they have aftermarket chokes. You can buy also extended chokes. As you can see these, this choke's ported. And there, so you can see it sticks out just a little bit further. There's tons of these aftermarket chokes out there in varying kind of choke restrictions as well. Most of them, you get them again in modified, and they have some long range versions supposed to be a little bit tighter. Let's see them in the guns. As you can see, they kind of stick out from the barrel a little bit. And again, they're ported. Both of these aftermarket chokes are Pattern Master. Pattern Master is what I've been shooting for a while. It's ported. The ported's supposed to take a little bit of the recoil away, but it definitely sends the shot, the gas off to the sides. Pattern Master had a patent at one point in time. Supposed to be a little bit tighter pattern because it released the gas away from the wadding coming out of the barrel. Keep your pattern a little bit tighter. But again, there's hundreds of manufacturers that make aftermarket chokes too, just for waterfowl hunting, just like they do for everything else, big game and turkey chokes. And then down here at the bottom is that Rete with just its regular choke in it, so it's not extended out. And then one thing about these ported chokes is they're really loud. So if you're hunting with somebody and somebody beside you, they have a choke like that, or you have one like that, the people beside you will be appreciative of some sort of hearing protection. I didn't wear hearing protection forever, for many, many, many years of hunting. I can tell the difference now. My father has hearing aids now. He can't hear a lick. So I would recommend some sort of hearing protection. You can go just as cheap as you want on hearing protection, and you can get really expensive on it. but just really cheap earplugs you can stick in. On the right is a pair of muffs. These are active noise canceling, so you can turn them on and you can hear a conversation with somebody beside you talking. I checked at Amazon before we got on this thing yesterday, and you can buy those things now for about $50, the earmuffs. Then also from the same manufacturer, a Walker game ears, you can get these in-ear versions. These are around $100. Same thing, is kind of active. You turn them on, you can hear conversations in the blind with people, and then they actually shut the noise off when you hear a loud noise, that bang. Those are pretty neat. And then you can get crazy expensive with them. And this is a set of Tetra. So these are actually hearing aid company. These are high-end hearing aids. They're tuned. They can, you take a hearing test, it kind of tunes it to your ear. If you have a loss in one ear, they can jump one ear up higher than the other. You can put them in, you can hear leaves and stuff cracking under your feet. Again, it's just one of those things. Not here trying to sell anybody on anything, but I will say one of the benefits for this, if you use something like a flex benefit card with your insurance or something, you can actually use that pre-tax money to buy this kind of hearing protection as well. So let's see. And then we talk about equipment, talking about calls, duck calls. Definitely don't have to be a great duck caller to go duck hunting, but if you want to be a waterfowler, eventually you're going to want to learn how to call, and that's a big part of it. It's fun, just a lot like turkey hunting. It's just the act of calling the animal to where you are and putting it where you want it to be is part of the hunt and really fun. So this is my lanyard. We've got 2 mallard calls on here. Then I've got a wood duck call, and then I have a whistle. This is a 6-in-1 kind of whistle. And we'll get into some specifics on the call as we go. Then I keep this lanyard in my bag as well. So I've got a goose call on there, and then another version of a whistle. This is supposed to be a Drake, I call it like a grunt, but it's a whistle you blow into it. It makes a grunting sound. If you didn't know that, so mallard hens are the only ducks that really quack. So the quack sound you're familiar with, and if you hear somebody blowing a duck call, they're making the sound of a mallard hen. The mallard drake makes a grunting kind of a whistle sound that's made by this long green one right there. And then other ducks whistle and kind of make grunting noises, but it's the mallard hen that makes that quack sound that you hear. And then so top left is a wood duck call. Wood ducks make a screeching sound. A lot of people don't think you can call wood ducks. I believe you actually can call wood ducks. There's a lot of folks that call wood ducks. The thing is, you just have to be somewhere where they want to be. And the idea is mallards will come to you and kind of backpedal into decoys, and you can shoot them. Wood ducks kind of fly by. So if if a wood duck flies by and you blow this call and turn it and it comes back towards you, they're not necessarily going to dive into your decoys, but if they come back and fly over the top of your decoys, they've presented a shot for you. So, but a lot of decoying wood ducks is splashing in the water and kind of blowing the right call at the right time. Then you have this kind of 6-in-1 whistle. You make a pintail sound, a widgeon sound, that mallard drake sound, teal make a little peeping whistle sound. The black one over here is the exact same type of call. It's just a little bit bigger, if you can see it in scale. I've had this little one forever. I like it because it just kind of clips onto my thing. I don't have as much to dangle around. And then at the bottom is this mallard whistle, mallard drake whistle, that you kind of blow air into it and make a grunting noise, and it makes a sound like a mallard drake. All these things just, the amount of wealth that's out there on YouTube to learn how to call is just amazing. So you can go to all kind of places to see those. These two are goose calls. The one on the left is a cut down short barrel goose call. Most like really good goose hunters probably use something along this line. They're a little harder to use. It's worth learning. It's cool to play with. The one on the right is a goose flute. A goose flute is probably the absolute easiest thing you can blow outside of a whistle. It's long and it makes the sound perfectly. Has a little break in it, so I keep this one around all the time with me just so I can grab it and even mess up blowing into it if a goose flies by. Also, I have it in case there's somebody in the blind with me too. If I don't have this cut down version on my lanyard, if I'm not out actually goose hunting, I usually don't carry that around with me. But I keep this flute in my blind bag all the time in case we happen to have geese kind of come by. There, like again, the goose flute is really, really easy to blow. All right, then we got decoys. Again, you don't have to have a ton of decoys to go duck hunting. If you want to go out in a beaver pond where you know wood ducks fly in every morning, that's awesome. It's a great way to hunt. If you want to get into duck hunting more and more and going kind of places and going out and hunting in some of these wildlife areas, it's probably a good idea to start accumulating decoys. I've got a ton of decoys, but I mean, that's 30 years of gathering decoys, and I've got some decoys that are at least 30 years old. They're pretty solid and can last you for a long time. Every once in a while you get some holes in them, somebody shoots them and things like that, but this is kind of my setup right here. Again, decoys come in dozens. That's just some arbitrary number. I figured out that I can manage about 15, 16 of them pretty easily per string. So the way I got these kind of set up, this is about 15 right here. And I like to kind of mix different brands and different sizes together because, ducks and geese are just like humans. They all come in different sizes. Decoys are designed to attract the ducks to you and direct them to land kind of right in where you want them to be. Ducks generally land into the wind. So you want the wind at your back, and we'll talk about that some when we talk about blinds in a few minutes. But ducks, like people, are different sizes and shapes. I like this kind of mixed brand, mixed kind of color scheme. It represents kind of what they look like in the wild. So if you look at this is 3 different brands, kind of 3 different sizes of all mallard drakes. All right, there we go. And then here's kind of 3 different brands, 3 different sizes of the hens. And you should get a couple of different sizes here of these duck butts where we're imitating that feeding duck we were talking about when we're talking about dabbling ducks, which are butt ups in the air. The next string of ducks, again, you see these 3 different sizes. All of them, those are all mallard drakes, but they're different sizes. And then you have these teals. If you kind of look at them, you're getting different head position, even a different color between the 2 different drakes. There's a blue wing. All these decoys kind of need to be washed a little. When I pulled them out, it's been a good time to kind of clean all my stuff up. And then you got, again, 2 different brands, kind of 2 different sizes and different kind of shades of those mallard hens. And then these are the darker ducks are actually black ducks. So I've got kind of 5 hens in the back. I think, these are actually, I think, early mallards because some of them have like a drake color to them. And then these are black ducks. So a lot of color makes a difference. A lot of white is good for attracting ducks. If you see those kind of mallard bodies, but also the opposite of that, kind of a dark black speck is pretty good too because it shows up against water as well. So those are kind of my 3 stringers, if you want to call it that I use, take with me whenever I go almost. If you get about 15 into them, kind of mixed up, you can carry 40 plus decoys in. All right, click. And then these are diver decoys. So a little different. These are bluebills and then some canvasback. And I just want to kind of show you these. There's quite a bit size difference, but these decoys are foam filled. So they're actually kind of carved out of foam, solid. They ride a little bit better on open water and kind of when it gets really wavy and windy. And then, like I said, you got bluebills, and then you got the canvasbacks, and kind of give you an idea of a different size there compared. There's the bluebill compared to the mallard hen, and then there's the bluebill compared to the drake there. So those are a little bit bigger ducks, a little bigger decoys. They stand out a little more in open water when ducks are kind of long ways away. All right, click. And then these are some really, really inexpensive foam decoys. I've had these for a long time. You can kind of see the peeling color to them, but they're really light. They're all foam. They're hollowed out. They ride pretty good on the water. They kind of suck down on the water. And there's 2 dozen right here. So you can kind of have these if I'm going somewhere where I need to add some more decoys to it. I'll throw this kind of stuff around. There's several versions of these out there. Like I said, they're really inexpensive. There's a version where you can kind of blow it up, kind of like a balloon. There's a lot of those, but they can add some depth to your decoy spread, just mixing some of those in. And then confidence decoys. So this is this white here is one of my mallard hen decoys. I painted white. The area I'm hunting right now, kind of every day when I hunt in the fall, there's a farm pond kind of close by, and there's a white duck that sits on that farm pond. And every day when I go out, or last season when I went out, I would see that duck on the pond there, and there was 4 or 5 mallards always sitting around with her. So last year I painted a decoy white to kind of match her, and I used that when I was hunting that location. It's anecdotal, but I killed ducks doing that. So I'll probably do that again this year as long as she's still there. It just anything to kind of make it look natural. Coop decoys, you can get herrings and all kind of things like that. Crows. I also use geese as confidence decoys. So these 6 geese right here, I take with me, or I keep them in my blind, to be honest there. And I see geese fly over. We don't kill a lot of geese in the pond that I hunt, but the geese, they fly over every day. So I've killed a few there. We've called some in, but most of the time they've got somewhere they want to go. But they're obviously in the area. So I use these as confidence decoys. I put those out kind of to the side, and I'll show you some decoy spreads in a minute, kind of show you how I use them, but I use these geese as confidence decoys. All right, click. There we go. And again, just different size. So you can see how much bigger those geese are than the mallards as well. And then this goose butt kind of compared to that pintail. And then motion decoys. I would kind of be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about motion decoys. We'll kind of speed through this. You can buy these motion decoys. This one just blows water up on the butt. It makes splashing around. You need motion when you're duck hunting. If it's windy out, the day's windy, that's great. You don't have to have as much, but if it's a calm day and the water's really still, that does not look natural to a duck. So you need some kind of motion. Like I said, you can buy these kind of motion decoys. The one on the right just spits water up. Excuse me, the one on the left. The one on the right, those little paddles kind of spin and splash water around. And then we'll have some spinning wing decoys. And the spinning wings are sometimes a controversial point when you're talking with waterfowlers. They absolutely work. they're designed to attract ducks from a long distance away, either way high up in the sky, or if you're in big open water, they spin and flash white and imitate either a duck landing or imitate a duck kind of stretching its wings on the water. If you look at a bunch of ducks on the water, you'll see a lot of white flashing out there. Every once in a while, they'll get up and stretch their arms out, stretch their wings out. And that's what these spinning wing decoys kind of imitate. So again, it's not necessary, but they do flare ducks as well. So if once the ducks see them and start coming in close, a lot of times that spin sort of scares them away. So there's some pros and cons to it. You have to think about if the ducks, are you getting ducks with them that you couldn't have seen before? If you take them down, do you not see the ducks anymore, or did you kind of get them over there because they saw that flashing? I like to use one with a remote so I can shut it off. So I let it spin until I see the ducks and the ducks are reacting to it. And then when they start reacting and circling around, then I'll hit the remote and turn it off. And then the simplest, easy, jerk string. So, jerk string is super easy, really inexpensive. There's one you can buy. You can purchase this. It's an anchor with a bungee cord on it. Just throw it out, strap your decoys to it. And then I use one that I make myself. So this is that spinning wing decoy pole with a bungee cord attached to it and a length of line. And you pull on that string and the decoys come towards you, and then you let the string go and they swim back. And that causes a lot of motion and ripples in the water, and I'll jerk on that thing all day long, just splashing around, pull on it hard if there's no ducks around, and make kind of some splashes. And then as you see ducks, you kind of pull on and tug it and make little ripples. You can see how the decoy just kind of attaches on a loop there. Again, a really cheap way to get by with it. And then see it kind of folds up real easily. Wrap the string around, fold the pole over, and you can pack all that kind of stuff up. Mine is moving really slow, buddy. So I don't know. I don't want to. Yeah. And then so kind of decoy rigging. I'm going to try to run through the rigging real quick because I want to spend a little bit of time on some setup, and then we can get to the questions.
And if you need me to move it, Terry, I can try that too. It's up to you.
Well, I'll see what so we just right now, this is just an old, down and dirty, easy way of rigging decoys. Wrap the line around the decoy. Obviously, you've got string, and then you've got a weight on the end of it. Again, this is probably the easiest, knowest way. It does get tangled up though. So, kind of what people found out, that if you have those and the anchors drop down and fumble around the bag, they kind of get all tangled up together. I prefer this method. It's called a Texas rig. So the Texas rigs, you see how there's all three of those decoy spreads I had hanging up on the side of my barn there, and the geese hanging up there. So they're easy to transport that way. It's a real simple process. You can make these as well. It's just a length of leader and an egg weight. So there's a loop on the end of it with an egg weight on the string. And then as you pick it up by the loop, the egg weight slides down and goes down towards the decoy. This is actually one you can buy from a company. This is from Rig 'em Right, I believe. But I make them with this clear leader line as well. But I have found out that depending on how much you can get lead for, sometimes it's easier just to buy them. And again, here's a long line. So this is kind of preferred method for deep water hunting, hunting out of a boat, hunting on the sound somewhere. Rather than have to rig all these decoys up with 10, 11 foot of line, you can use kind of a long line system. You see how I have it wrapped around just a drop cord spool here, and it just requires kind of two weights, one on one end, and obviously you can adjust this if it need to be a whole lot deeper. I just wouldn't put a decoy on the first loop and let it get as far, and then you can string out decoys on this kind of long line as far as you want. You can put up to a dozen probably on there, depending on how far of string you have. Generally, I would probably put 7, 8, 10 of them or something, and then kind of put them side by side. And then kind of ways to transport all these. Just a typical bag, decoy bag. Those lightweight styrofoams are in that bag. And then a sled. These sleds work really good. You can buy these sleds, again, cheaply off of Amazon as well. Most of the time, they're actually snowmobile sleds for ice fishermen. I think this one's called Jet Sled or something, but that's pretty easy to pull stuff across water if you're going through deep water, or just across the ground through the mud. And then kind of a kayak or boat's nice to have sometimes, even if you're not riding in it. Gives you a stable platform to kind of work off of and have a dry place to put all your stuff if you're kind of in chest deep water or something. And then, so let's spend a little bit of time on decoy spreads right quick. So just kind of as an idea of things that you may hear and come across. Again, don't worry so much about the shape of the spread as much as kind of what it's for. So this is what they would call a J or a hook spread. And most folks would use this a lot for this open water, those kind of diver hunts. If you take that long line, for some reason, divers will follow a line to you. So you can run that line out there into the water away from you, and those divers will kind of follow that line down into. And ducks need a hole to land in. So the shape, just kind of remember that ducks always land in the wind. You want the wind at your back if possible. So whenever possible, keep it there. If not, if you can't put it at your back, you can kind of set it side to side. But you want to avoid having that wind in your face if at all possible. It makes it for a little harder hunt if the ducks are coming from behind you and trying to land in front of you. A little harder to shoot them that way, and a little harder to get them to get exactly where you want. But when we think about these kind of tactics for putting out decoys and some terminology that you may hear in the field, decoys are used to attract ducks to where you are. You want to convince ducks that it's safe to come in and kind of direct them to within your shooting range. And a lot of people think that wing shooting is difficult, and it can be hard to shoot, kind of pass shoot ducks. But backpedaling ducks kind of in a landing zone are much easier to shoot. So if you can kind of direct them to where you want them to be in this little hole. Again, don't worry so much about these shapes, but kind of think of a decoy. Think of these decoys as blockers and ways that you want to direct the ducks. So you want to keep them away from one area and open up a spot for them. So if you look at this one, you've got kind of the blind, this box at the bottom, the wind is blowing from the back, and then a long line of decoys coming into a hook shape with an opening for the ducks to land. And that would be what someone would call a hook or a J hook. And typically that's more of a big water, open water duck. And then more of a puddle duck kind of situation would be kind of a U. So it wouldn't go out quite as far, wind direction kind of same way. And then using these ducks as blockers, your decoys, just kind of create a U shape and leave an open hole in the middle for the ducks to kind of land in. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect U or anything. You may have a ton of ducks on one side and not so many on the other. And then a W shape, if you had a scenario, you ever saw one like that, this is more for a big setup. So if you were in a bunch of trees and you guys are spread out, you might want two kind of holes to be there. And then this next one is kind of my setup that I hunt over in my kind of permanent area. I hunt with a permanent blind. And it's a kind of a modified U. So the wind kind of blows left or right out of there. Typically, the ducks typically come from the right-hand corner down into that space. So, if you look, this kind of triangle is my spinning wing decoy. And then the line would be that jerk string I put out. So I keep that, pulling on that, making it kind of waves. And then I put these ducks up in this corner, kind of a blocker, so I don't want them to land out of my range. And then the right-hand corner, I use these as blockers as well to kind of keep me from having to swing over to the right too far. And these black ones here, that represents the geese. That's where I put my geese in that setup. But this is kind of my typical setup. And even when I'm going somewhere different, I'll set basically this same way and just try to get the wind to my back if at all possible. And the only reason this was not set with the wind, it's a permanent setup. Actually, the sun rises over to my left. So the sun's at my back. And that's kind of the way I built that. And then there's a picture here of an actual setup here. This is actually Lake Mattamuskeet. A couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, last day of the season, it was cold, everything's frozen. But you can kind of see this is the ice hole that we kind of broke open and kicked the ice out of the way, but you can see the ducks kind of the way they're set up. And I wanted to kind of let you see. So here's a group of pintails. So I've got these pintails set up like that. And then these are these kind of feeding butts you can see. There's a different version of them. So here's what I call no heads, where it just looks like their head's just underwater. And then you have these butts in the air. And then this one is actually kind of like a drinking looking kind of thing. And then here are some of those foam decoys. So and you can see all different kind of shapes and sizes out there. It looks a little bit more natural. And then probably most important is kind of hiding. And let's see if it'll pop up through there. Yeah, so there's just some different blinds. So you see all the kind of camouflage. It's not near as important of what kind of camouflage you're wearing if you're hidden pretty well. You can see this sort of big blind right here with 6 hunters in it. The one right below it is a pretty good sized blind. That's actually a pontoon boat with kind of 6 holes in it. And then the top right-hand corner is that blind that I hunt out of most days on my piece of land. And then below that is just kind of, that's my father staying up against a tree. Just you can see there's a backpack strapped to the tree, just an illustration of some of the things we've talked about already. And it's not very deep there, but I've got my little boat there to kind of carry our stuff out there and drag around and give us something to kind of keep dry and be able to hang on to when we're putting things out. And next, there we go. And then this is not actually mine. This is a buddy of mine had this, but this is a blind you can buy that you can actually put all this camouflage on and sit in it. So pretty comfortable and lets you kind of hide pretty well. He actually has his dog under it as well. So there's a lot of different versions of that. All right, I kind of breezed through that last little bit faster, but I want to give everybody some time for some questions. All right, Deke, take it away, buddy.
Very, very informative and very good job. Yeah, I could even start duck hunting now, but I guess the only thing is I'd be spending twice as much than I do for turkey. I don't know. So yeah, great job, Terry. So now, yeah, we'll be starting the questions here in a second. I guess the first thing, as I say to Nathan, and hopefully he's still with us, that was a lot of information. What are, Nathan, the most common waterfowl related hunting violations?
The most common would be unplugged shotguns and taking migratory waterfowl over bait.
Okay. And I don't see one question. So if we'll wait here like a minute or so, see if any questions come up. But right now we don't have any. So I guess that just goes to show, Terry, you did a great job.
Well, so Nathan, let me ask you something on that then. So I guess we didn't cover that. So unplugged shotgun, you want to speak to that a little bit? Just you can only use 3 shells basically duck hunting.
Yes, sir. The way the law reads is just it's a shotgun not capable of holding more than 3 shells. So a lot of times I get the question asked, does it have to be an actual plug? It doesn't necessarily have to be a plug. A lot of times, if you're in a pinch and you forget your plug, you can, whittle a stick or, a pencil or, put it right down the tube. But just as long as that shotgun is not capable of holding more than 3 shells.
Yeah, I've used a pencil a lot. So yeah, a pencil was the way to go back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, just out of curiosity, Nathan, while we're up with the enforcement, is there anything else that stands out in your mind that you've run into with waterfowl questions or, or I mean, questions generally that hunters have, anything at all that pops into your mind?
No, I think Terry did a great job, just more or less just ethics, that's one of the things that, we get a lot of calls on is, like Terry said, hitting on a lot of the sky busting, be setting up too close to people. And those are some things that I think, they might not necessarily be illegal, but they can certainly give, waterfowl hunters a bad name or a bad taste in their mouth.
Okay, one thing I'm curious about, and this goes back to when I was a wildlife tech on the coast in New Bern for only 6 months. And I, as a wildlife tech, was involved in duck ID. And of course, I got a guide and went out there, but that seems to me to be a very daunting. Like, you really need to seriously spend some time in understanding, like, for example, not just what they look like, but flight patterns and things like that. Terry, is that something too? Because that usually comes up, like certain ones will fly a certain way.
Yeah, and to be honest, it seems like it's daunting, but it's really not as difficult. I guess for the absolute first timer going out, it's a little bit of something you're kind of worried about. But generally, when you're going to an area where you know kind of what to expect. So, if you're in a swamp and there are wood ducks in there, you can't kill for 3 wood ducks. So, and you can't really confuse a wood duck with a mallard necessarily. Most of the time they're pretty easy. The ones to me that are probably the most difficult, usually those there's not very much limit on those. If that like a gadwall and a widgeon hen or a couple of different teal, you can kill your limit of those, if that makes sense. You can kill 6 of those. So the ones where like a pintail is pretty easy to tell. Once it's good in daylight, you can tell what a pintail looks like when it's flying. You can tell what a canvasback looks like when it's flying. There's not really much confusion between a mallard and a canvasback, or a bluebill and a mallard, or a bluebill and a wood duck, if that makes sense.
Okay,
I
yeah.
don't want to try to get body, but it's really a lot easier. Diving ducks fly a whole lot faster and fly different formations, and it's really not as hard as it's kind of made out to be. Again, most of the time, the ducks that are really close and similar in size and similar in color, again, like the gadwall and the widgeon and all that, you can actually kill 6 of those. So you can kill your whole limit of those if you wanted to.
Yeah,
Okay.
my advice is, for new hunters is either, go with a guide or go with an experienced hunter your first time out, and that'll save a lot of headache.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like some really good advice. Okay, we do have one here that, kind of makes me think too. Are decoys a must? What is hunting without decoys like? Would it be very discouraging? So that is a good question.
Yeah, so what I would say to that, that's a good question, is no, they're definitely not a must, and it just really depends on where you're going. So again, if you're hunting a beaver swamp where wood ducks fly into every day and you're wood duck hunting, I hunted for many, many years just doing that. You would never take a decoy out there for that. You just know that ducks are coming to that spot to feed every morning, or getting up that morning and leaving from that spot. A lot of people wood duck hunt definitely without decoys. Where the decoys are probably a must is when you want to, if you're talking about hunting in some sort of coastal marsh area or a big lake of some sort. If you're hunting Carr Lake or Jordan Lake, I'm not sure which one of those you can hunt, but some of those things, that might be a little bit frustrating if you just kind of stood out there waiting for ducks to pass by. But again, decoys are pretty easy to get into. And just even half a dozen. My father had, him and his hunting buddy split a dozen decoys when I was a little kid. I remember him having 6 and his hunting buddy having 6, and we hunted over those 6 decoys for years. I took those 6 decoys out the first time I ever went out to Body Island and hunted that preserve out there. I just went with those 6 decoys. I would say probably just kind of check something like Facebook Marketplace and find some fairly inexpensive. If you were going to try something like that, it would be frustrating if you were hunting a big location, if you didn't have something, if you're calling and making a quacking noise, you want the duck to look down and see another duck down there probably. If you're just going to stand in the woods in a piece of game lands where wood ducks are, they're not necessary at all. I hope that helps.
And I see one here that, yeah, it's kind of a question, but not. Can you harvest resident geese with a golf club if they're always hanging out by a golf course? And then they said, just kidding. Would that, Nathan, would that be like wildlife harassment? Or like if somebody were, say, not in season and they're wanting to get rid of them or something and hitting them with things, what is that in terms of the law?
Well, it would most certainly not be a lawful manner of take. It would either be the use of a shotgun, and archery equipment would be permitted. But man, if you're on the golf course and you've got a goose coming at you, you could defend yourself. But as far as actively hunting a goose with a golf club, probably not.
Yeah, and obviously that golf course, if it's anywhere near city limits, that's another question concerning firearms.
Yeah, but I definitely say this: that's a good location to start at, though. If there are geese at a golf course, it's good to kind of check them out and see where they're coming from, because they're coming from somewhere else, or they're leaving that golf course and going to somebody's field. So a lot of times, those are great things to do to September kind of resident goose hunt, is to find out, start at a golf course and find out where those geese are coming from.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Just as an example, when I was biking and busing to work there in Raleigh, the bus depot would have been a great place to hunt geese because they were always there. But that's part of that nuisance thing with wildlife, I guess. And just a little addition to that, and yeah, we're going to wrap it up here shortly, I guess, because we're not getting a lot of questions tonight. Because yeah, great job with the hunting. I can remember deer hunting near one of the waterfowl impoundments, and there was a lot of people going out there in the morning. I was deer hunting, and I was probably a couple 100 yards away from the impoundments, and wood ducks were zinging over me right at daybreak. And there I am with a rifle. I wasn't hunting ducks, but there you go. That's considered an opportunity too, correct? If I was standing in the woods off the impoundment, a couple 100 yards, that would have been an opportunity to take some wood ducks, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That's so probably the better part of my hunting career, I scouted duck hunting basically when I was deer hunting. So yeah, like you said, I would sit in the deer stand, and that's what got me fired up about ducks more than anything, was just watching ducks in the afternoon or in the morning from a deer stand, going, God, there's a bunch of ducks over there. And that's kind of one of the things that got the fire in my belly with it. Yeah, I saw there was one more question popped up down there. If you want to.
Yeah. How long do you stay out hunting? For deer, I'm usually in the stand 30 minutes before sunup. Same?
Yeah. So there's actually, that's part of the regulation. So you can actually shoot ducks 30 minutes before sunrise. So if you've been in, deer hunting up in the morning, that it gets light before actual sunrise. So typically you would get in a lot earlier than that, set everything up or whatever you want to stand, all that kind of deal. And you could start shooting ducks at 30 minutes before sunrise. And then it all depends on the location. So if, again, these little wood duck holes, a lot of times it's 30 minutes, you bang, 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 and going back to the house or somewhere getting you a biscuit. When I go out kind of like in the coast or something like that, I'm staying for a while. There seems to be kind of a lull in midday with ducks. They sit down somewhere and rest, I guess, like us, kind of taking that afternoon nap. But, you can hunt ducks all through the morning in some of these places, and then go out and get some lunch or something and come back in, and then you can hunt again in the afternoon, and you have to quit at sunset. So, but a typical day for me, Bladen County duck hunting, I go and, I hunt till probably 8:30, 9 o'clock. And if I haven't seen anything in the last little while, I'll kind of head back. If I go somewhere and I pay somebody to take me hunting, I'm hunting as long as I can. So that just sort of depends on kind of what your what you're looking at. And typically wood ducks fly early in the morning, and the bigger ducks, the mallards and the gadwall and things like that, I usually don't see those until a little bit after it gets good in daylight. And one of the things about decoys, they don't really work well until the sun gets up. So when sun gets on those decoys, they can see them. You know, kind of fortunately for ducks, a lot of times you can see them in an open area, but some of these birds are really high up, and you don't notice that they're looking down and seeing. So they can kind of see those decoys when the sun gets up good. But usually about 9 o'clock or so, it kind of peters off locally for me.
Well, and Terry, I guess I would add also as a deer hunter, and I've seen this myself, especially when it was, I think, Goose Creek or something down there in New Bern. Not unlike myself, when I'm hunting public land, I'm back there. I'm usually the first person in the parking lot, and my entire deer hunting career, I would actually use hunters to move deer to me. And I think, isn't it true the same with waterfowl? A lot of those folks are out there wee hours of the morning trying to get their spot, correct? Like on public, especially.
Yeah, and I don't, Nathan Mike can speak. Some places have particularly with a boat ramp, you can't launch your boat until a certain time. So you might want to check on that. You know, if it's just hunting in a river or something, you probably don't have that. But there's, Nathan, can you speak to that? There's some of these public lands, especially on these draw hunts, that you can't leave before 4:30 or something in the morning.
Yeah, I believe that's right. Like, down at the coast, like at Pamlico Point, I don't think you can walk across the dam until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. For the reason of keeping people from, camping overnight, just to get their spot.
Yeah. So something to think about,
Yeah, but to your point though, just inevitably every time you go hunting, you walk out to pick up the decoys, and all of a sudden a duck flies by, right? So that's just like, deer hunting or anything else. You decide you're going to climb down, and all of a sudden a deer blows at you.
Absolutely.
A lot of times if I'm hunting public land or other hunters around, I like for them to leave first, because they will jump some birds up every once in a while when they leave too. So
yeah, same thing. Okay, guys, so I guess we're going to wrap it up here. Any closing comments from either of my panelists regarding this fall?
No, what I'll say is, use those websites. Definitely go on to North Carolina Wildlife site, and October 1st again is the deadline for these draw hunts. So I just put in for one yesterday. There's tons of those out there across the state. You can hunt coastal marshes, you can hunt bottomlands all over the place, and then there's a bunch of places that are just walk-in. So I would definitely recommend. I'm not one of these guys that want to hide these places to hunt. I want everybody to kind of use them, so we're always able to use them. I don't want it to go where somebody comes up and says, "Hey, nobody ever hunts there anymore. Let's change that to a walk-in park or something."
Yeah. Anything from you, Nathan?
No. Just everybody be safe, and if you have any questions, be willing to, you can look up myself or Deed, or I'm sure Terry. You can find my name and number on the North Carolina Wildlife website. So if anybody has any questions, just feel free to reach out to any of us.
Great. I will say, folks, thanks for joining us tonight, spending time with us here. And there are 2 more webinars. There's another waterfowl webinar that's coming up, and also an upland webinar, upland game hunting, which is typically, quail, woodcock, things like that. And then there's also 2 GSO workshops. One is a deer workshop coming up, and also an upland workshop. And keep in mind that the webinars are for all skill levels, and the GSOs for those that are very new, and basically someone that's never hunted, has only been actively hunted for no more than 3 years, lacks social support, meaning they don't come from a hunting family, and obviously for any lapsed hunters that haven't hunted for a long time and haven't taken big game relative to the deer hunting workshop. So again, thanks for being with us tonight. Hope you're safe out there. Stay safe, be ethical, and enjoy yourself. There's nothing more rewarding than time spent outdoors, or as I like to say, therapy. And as Terry said, and I'll just reiterate it, and you will often hear it, that no, you don't need a lot of stuff. So don't think you have to spend a ton of money. That said, I'm a retail therapist and my portfolio is guns and hunting equipment. So that's largely because I'm unsupervised. So you probably still will want to buy stuff. Have a great night. Be safe and hope to see you again. Take
Thank
care,
you, guys.
folks. Okay. And good night, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, last question just popped up there, but you've
Oh.
already answered that. So it is going to be, you are going to post this. So
Yes, if that person is still there, it will be posted, but as it said in the beginning, it could be up to 2 weeks till it's processed. And then after that, everyone that is registered will receive it, as long as they're in that registration system. And then it will be put on our WRC YouTube page as well. So just be patient. Again, if you're already registered, it'll come to you directly. And it'll go on YouTube, but it might take up to 2 weeks. It has to be pulled from the cloud, turned into a YouTube, and it's done by another staff that is involved with lots of stuff. And we checked a little late. Okay. Take care. Have a great night. I'm going to end the webinar. And again, thanks to my panelists for being here tonight. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much, guys.